Thank you. Thank you, Professor Zhang, for this excellent presentation with very detailed background information and also a very comprehensive list of policy recommendations. So now the floor is open for 1 or 2 questions. If anybody want to ask a question, please just unmute yourself, or you can type. Yeah, Klaus.
Yes, thank you very much, Yun-sen, for a very impressive, as expected, talk about what you have done, looked at for quite a while. Lots of facts and conclusions. It looks all very sound and promising. But just one important, I guess, context question. China has done a lot of policy intervention in a certain sense, yes? So it would be important to understand what would have happened to China without any policy measures. So the issue, I mean, there's a little bit work on it, but not too much so far. I know. How much do we know about what has happened? We have seen the decline anyway. We have seen with the policy. And isn't what happens recently this drastic decline in contrast of more positive, let's say, size-oriented activities? Doesn't this point at the fact that we cannot do so much? That's my question. Maybe, well, if you cannot hope for a change in the relationship between income and fertility, as you indicated at the end, we may not can go very far. Yes, that's my question. What is your feeling about it?
So you mean without the one-child policy, what would China be?
Yes.
Is that your question?
Yes. Would the decline not happen anyway?
Yeah.
One could simulate this.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, but that requires some good research to answer this question rigorously. It would decline anyway, but maybe not at this pace, not at this speed and at this magnitude, right?
So there is no research. That's what I'm implicitly asking. There is no. I'm not questioning. I know that you haven't done exactly that study, but you have surveyed the literature. Is there any? I haven't seen it. Is there any convincing analysis of the counterfactual question, which is an important one?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I vaguely maybe have seen something, but not strong impression. Yeah, maybe there are some working papers of that nature. Yeah. So yeah, but this counterfactual may be very difficult to analyze. Yeah, but it's a good question. Yeah.
So the consensus seems to be that the one-child policy has not played a very important role, right, in explaining the declining fertility. From what I read, also your Journal of Economic Literature piece and other papers, but those are not very rigorous analysis of counterfactuals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because my impression was that it did not play a major role, right? Ironically, somewhat ironically, right?
That's my feeling too. So that's my feeling too. But I have no facts. Okay, no hard facts. Okay.
Yeah.
So, Jinan, can I ask you a question about the policy recommendation you give? So basically, the idea is to subsidize fertility and incentivize those maybe people from the lowly educated families to have more births, and then compensate them by providing better education, public schooling. Things like that. So my concern is that whether these would work as expected. As we know, the quality of education, the skills are not completely determined by schools, right? Public schools, family environment is very important. So if we encourage those, low SES families to have, a lot of births, and then hope to try to solve this problem, education problem, by public education, where it, work compensate for the deficiency in family environment, as many research has emphasized, right?
But if they build more school in the central town and in the city, better schools, more schools.
I understand. I certainly agree that it would be a necessary thing, right, to do to provide better public education, both for rural and migrant children. But my concern is that to what extent those can substitute for family education, family environment. Right.
But this will be a long battle, right? The family environment, right? But if the children go to boarding school and so on, then the family environment. But in family environment also improves gradually over time. Right now, maybe not good, but okay. we make progress a little bit, year by year. Not say it's a 5-year plan, maybe it's a 20-year plan. Yeah.
Okay, I see.
But I mean, we want to people see the danger of just increasing fertility, because that's no good, right? Okay. Because that will cause another social problem. Yeah.
Okay, I agree. Yeah. Yes. Any other questions from the audience? Okay. Let's thank Professor Zhang again for this very nice and provocative presentation on this very important topic. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next presentation. So the next paper is on gender imbalance, assortative matching, and household income inequality in China. Presented by Chen Huang from University of Southampton.
Okay.
Hello.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
So good afternoon, everyone. It is my honor to participate in this conference. So now I'm going to share my screen so you can see my slides. All right. So can you see my slides now?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So during my presentation, if you have any questions or if you cannot hear my voice, please feel free to interrupt me. So this research, the title of this research is Gender Imbalance, Assortative Matching, and Household Income Inequality in China. And this research comes from a general question, that is, what will be the consequences of male abundance on real economy? So before we officially talking about my results, I'd like to talk about some motivation of this research. So by using the Chinese population census data across several waves, so I plot the sex ratio at birth of China. So the sex ratio is defined at birth is defined as the number of boys divided the number of girls. So as we can see in this figure, after the introduction of the one-child policy, we see an increase of the sex ratio across 3 types of regions, that is rural, the urban part, and at the national level. So indeed, we found across time, the sex ratio at birth increased in China. And if we using the census data in 2010, So I plot the sex ratio at the prefectures level. As you can see, there is a heterogeneity in the sex ratio across prefectures. So the prefecture is equivalent to the city level in China. So motivated by these two facts, we see the sex ratio vary across time and space dimensions. So in this paper, we are going to address several questions. So the first one will be, what is the effect of the rising sex ratio on matching outcomes in China's major market? And secondly will be how does the sex ratio affect the household income inequality? And the last one is, how does the sex ratio affect education attainment for men and women? So as we know that the matching pattern in the major market has important implication for economic outcomes. So it's frequently argued that there is a growing trend of assorted marriage, that is like marriage-like across countries. For instance, if we see the census data of United States, Germany, and UK, we found that there is a rising assorted marriage across time. And the rising assorted marriage is associated with the increase in household income inequality. So in this paper, we contribute two streams of literature. So firstly, we empirically examine the relationship between the sex ratio and household sorting by using the individual level data and regional level data. And secondly, we endogenize the education decision for men and women before they enter the major market to see how would they react differently if they expect there is a rising male abundance in the major market. So let me firstly talk about the empirical evidence. So in this empirical evidence, I collect the individual information data from the China household income projects over 3 waves. That is 2002, 2007, and 2013. And we restrict the sample at the urban region and restrict the cohort age between 20 to 30. So we look at the first marriage in their life. So we firstly compute education correlation at the prefecture level. That is used to measure the degree of assorted matching. And then we collect data, we infer the sex ratio from the population census data. Then we have two key variables in our regression. So after controlling the covariates, we found that there is a negative and significant relationship between the sex ratio in the marriage market and education correlation between couples. So this result is robust when we look at the individual level data. For instance, I change the dependent variable at the education gap between the couples, and still I run the sex ratio on the education gap between the couples. I found there is a positive and significant relationship between these two variables. That is, with the increase of the sex ratios, there is an increasing of the education gap between the couples. So motivated by the empirical facts, we built a search and matching based general equilibrium model, so in which we endogenize the major market competition in the model. And we want to see how the male abundance will affect the matching outcomes and household income inequality in China. Also, we endogenize education decision to see how would male and female react differently before they enter the major market. So here are the details of the model. So considering the economy is populated by 4 types of agents with 2 skill types and 2 genders. So the skill type is skilled or unskilled, with two genders, male and female. So in the first period, the individual will decide either become skilled or unskilled. And in the second period, once the individual finish the education and they enter into the marriage market, meeting with the opposite gender in either in each skill type, skilled or unskilled. So the individual will infer the partner's future income and also draw a match-specific quality Q. So this can be understood as love. So in the last period, the agent works and consumes their income. So following the Fernandez inter alia published in Quarterly Journal of Economics, so we build an indirect utility function here. So the payoff of from a household equals the utility of consumption from their family income plus the match specific quality they perceived. So we assume that the male and female, they share a common joint utility function and derive the utility function from the consumption in the last period, and from the quality, match quality of his or her match. So in this matching model, we have two rounds of match in the match market. In the first round, the individual, they meet randomly and draw a match specific quality with the CDF function QQ. And this match can be accepted by both agents or rejected by at least one of them. So if they agree to this match, they getting married. If they reject this match, they go into the second round of match. So here I use the Q bar to select the cutoff match quality for individuals of gender in a match type. So there will be four types of match. That is a skilled male meet with skilled female, skilled male meet with unskilled female, and unskilled male meet with skilled female, unskilled male meet with unskilled female. So below the cutoff match quality, the agent will reject this match, will reject to get married. So here we found the probability for the type of skilled male and skilled female get married in the first round is, that is the probability he draw the match quality that is greater than the cutoff match quality in skilled and skilled type match, cross the probability that female draws a match quality greater than this type of is cutoff match quality. So that equals to 1 minus Q with the function of the maximum of the cutoff match quality. So now we introduce the number of participants in the marriage market. So we assume the number of males in the marriage market always equals to 1, and the number of females smaller than 1, which we exogenously calibrate it in when we done the quantitative analysis. And using the psi m stands for the share of skilled male in all males, and psi f stands for the share of skilled female in all females. So in round 1, since the number of males is larger than the number of females, so some men will not meet a potential partner in the first round. So there will only be NF meetings in the first round. So for skilled male meet with unskilled female, this meeting, the number of meetings will equal to the number of females times the share of skilled male times the share of unskilled female. So here we found out the number of meetings in the first round, and I use the theta to stand for the number of unmatched individuals with the gender male or female, and skill type, skilled or unskilled after round 1. So thus the number of unmatched skill male will equals to, here it's extra skill male because we have more number of males in the match market. So this part of male, skill male, they won't meet anyone. Plus the unmarried skill male and skill female. So the skill male and skill female, they meet each other, but the draw match quality is smaller than the cutoff match quality. So they reject this marriage and go to second round. And for the also plus the unmarried skill male, unmarried skill male and unmarried skill male and unskilled female. So skill male meet with unskilled female, but the joint match quality is smaller than the cutoff match quality, so they reject this marriage and they go to the second round. So in the second round, we assume that the remaining unmarried skill males are matched and get married with skilled females, and the remaining unmarried unskilled males are matched and get married with unskilled females. So in the round 1, in the round 2, they draw a new round match quality, which is a IID from the same cumulative distribution function, and with the expected value of mu. So a skilled male is indifferent between accepting a first round of match with an unskilled female and rejecting that match and entering into the second round if this condition is satisfied. So for a skilled male meet with unskilled female, this type of match will be indifference between going to the second round if the expected payoff going to the second round equals the payoff in these two types of match plus the cutoff match quality. So in equilibrium, the equilibrium is determined by 8 reservation match qualities, which is gender specific and match type specific. So we have 2 genders and 4 types of the match. So that will be 8 reservation match quality in the first round match. So for instance, in round 1, a skilled man match with a skilled woman will be indifferent if that is payoff from getting match with a skilled female with a cutoff match quality equals to the expected payoff going to the second round. So in the second round, that is the probability the male meet with a skilled female times the payoff of getting married with this female, or the probability the male meet with no females. So he will be single in the second round. So over here, we will have 8 reservation match quality listed by the function equation 4. So if we use pi stands for the number of different types of household in the population, then for type of unskilled husband, unskilled wife in the population, we have, so that is an unskilled husband meet with unskilled wife times the probability they accept these types of marriage in the first round. This marriage happens in first round. Plus, in the second round, that is unmarried singles in the second round, depending on the minimum the lowest number of agent. So for the remaining single males, we have the number of single males equals to this one. That is compare with the remaining single males and single females. So we have this condition here. So that is all the types of household, the number of all types of household equals the number of females. So in this model, we assume that all males, all females, they get married. And we also have this condition here. That is for those get married plus those two singles equals to the number of males in the population. So let's look at the simulation results. Once we solve the model, once we calibrate the model, so the sex ratio in the model is exogenous, and the wage we used here is projected from the lifetime income. And here it's the equivalence scale to capture the household living cost. So after we resolve the reservation match quality, we see that with the increase of the sex ratios in all types of match, the reservation match quality for males is going down. So this implies that the male in the marriage market is less picky in the presence of the male abundance. So once we have resolved the matching, the reservation match quality, we want to study how does the sex ratio will affect the degree of assortative matching, which we construct a education correlation coefficient by using this formula here. And we can find at the rising of the sex ratio in the match market, there is a decline of the education correlation between couples. So also, if we plot the sex ratio at birth from the census data, we found that as time forward, there is an increasing of the sex ratio at birth. So this implies with the increase of the sex ratios, this implies a forward of time. So this result tells us as time forward, there should be a decline of assortative marriage in China. So let's compare the how that model fit with the data. So if we see the education, the mean of the education correlation, we found the model generated equals to 0.6567, and which is close to the data. And when we compare the standard deviation, we found the model has a smaller standard deviation because in the sample we have some outliers. So that's caused the big standard deviation. So now let's see how does this implicate for the household income inequality in China. So the first figure over here is simulated from the model. As we see that the rising of the sex ratios implies a decline of the Gini coefficient because from the result we found with the rising of the sex ratios, there is a decreasing of the assortative marriage. So this implies a decrease of the Gini coefficient. So compared with the data facts by using the collecting the data from urban household survey and the National Bureau of Statistics, we found across years, the household income inequality in China decreased after a certain year. And we found this this relationship is robust when we use alternative income inequality measurements. For instance, if we use a coefficient of variance and the sales index, we found they all implicate a negative relationship. That is, with the rising of the sex ratios, there is a declining of the household income inequality. So lastly, I want to talk about another contribution of this paper. So before the agent, they go to the marriage market. So over here, I like to use so the expected payoff going to the match market for the decision tree for male who want to become a skilled. I plot it here. So this skilled male can meet with a skilled female and unskilled female, or meet with no one in the first round. And they make the decision in whether accept this marriage or not. If they reject, they will go to the second round, meet different types of meet the skilled female or to be single. So after I plot the decision tree for 4 types of agents and solve it, I got this figure here. That implies that with the increase of the sex ratios, the proportion of skilled male and female increase. So that means that more people, so more men and more women will choose to become a skilled agent. So compare this result with the data fact I plot from the population census data. We found across years, the proportion of skilled male and female increase. So in general, the results generated from the model can quantitatively match with the empirical facts and the data facts. So in conclusion part, I like to say the sex ratio in the marriage market is negatively related to household sorting in China. So which also implies a downward relation between the household income inequality. And the result from the model is consistent with the literature's finding and data facts. And secondly, I like to say when endogenizing the education decision, we found both males and females will increase the education investment with an increase in the sex ratios. And this trend is consistent with the data facts. So I think this is the end of this presentation. And thanks very much for your listening. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me.
Okay, thank you. Very interesting exercise. I can allow for maybe one question from the floor. Anybody? So if not, let me make a very brief comment. As I said, it's very interesting exercise to try to model how increase in sex ratios change marriage market, marriage sorting, and household income inequality. My comment would be maybe try to relate the model more with the observed empirical facts from the literature. From what I remember, there has been some studies, including one of my own papers, on how assortative mating has affected household income inequality, and the result there was that it has not played a important role, a major role in shaping the household income inequality. And I think another paper done for the United States got similar results. So I mean, this is very promising exercise, but maybe try more carefully to relate to empirical work. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move to the next presentation. Heterogeneous peer effects for the disadvantaged students. The presenter is Zhang from IESR.
Can you hear me? So let me first share my screen. So I can't share my screen yet.
Maybe Chen, maybe you can stop sharing your screen first.
Oh, I think Chen needs to stop.
Okay.
Okay, let me try. Can anyone see my screen now? Like,
yes.
Okay. So, okay. Thanks for having me. It's a very great opportunity to present this joint work with Professor Huang and also my colleagues, Zhang and Yujie. This is still like an ongoing project, but we already got like preliminary results and make the model solid. But any suggestions, comments for any part of the model, any like empirical applications, like are welcome. So feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Okay, so first let me briefly talk about like what motivated us to do this. So many researchers actually identified the peer effects of disadvantaged youngs predict significant cognitive outcomes. So, but after we reviewed literature, we find actually rarely literature pay attention to whether the peer effects of disadvantaged youngs predicted the non-cognitive outcomes. So I think previous literature, most of the peer effects literatures, they are focusing on, for example, assume a classroom, assume the same, they are from the same class or they are from the same school. So they most of them predictions are rely on the random assignments of peer assumptions, or the social networks are actually exogenously formed assumptions. But one question is that actually, so different peers may have like different effects. So for example, let's think about like a disadvantaged youngs interacts with a group of advantaged youngs are different from the peer effects that she interacted with a group of disadvantaged youngs. So that's why like it motivated us to come up like two empirical questions. The first question is like, do disadvantaged young peers affect their non-cognitive outcomes? So that's actually we rarely see in the previous literature. And if so, we can find some evidence. Then how large is this peer effects? That's the first like main empirical questions motivate us to moving forward. And the second one is actually, I think it's a more empirical people care about is, for example, if I already know a peer of groups, like how much can we benefit or cost the disadvantaged youngs by switching the peer groups with whom these disadvantaged youngs interact with. So that's why like in this paper, we try to construct a structure model, and hopefully we can do some counterfactual analysis to answer, do the estimation and the counterfactual analysis to answer these two empirical questions. So to answer these questions, we actually using a unique survey data of a friendship network from Mianzhu City in China. So due to like a China urbanization over past decades, like a large number of students actually are left behind in their hometowns due to Hukou system. So that actually created a huge amount of like at least the non-cognitive disadvantaged students. So Mianzhu is actually one of the typical cities in China which have the similar issue. So first, let me motivate you from the data that like why these peer effects may matter. So if you look at like the survey data we draw based on the network from the Mianzhu city, and we randomly draw 4 of the classroom networks from our sample. And the orange dot actually represents the disadvantaged students or like the left behind students. And the blue dot actually represent the non-left behind or like advantaged students. And if you look at these 4 graphs, actually you can see there is a pattern, the density is similar and the segregation pattern showed up in the data. So that is why I think we should care about more about the peer effects for the disadvantaged students. But here are some challenges when we look at this data. So the first one is actually networks are not exogenously formed. So survey data provide friendship directions, but these exogenous assumptions for network may not hold. So it's actually endogenously formed for the network itself. So we should consider endogeneity issue of the network formation when we use this data. Compared with previous literature, that's like the first consideration. We think we should deviate from. So the second one is about the pure effects of the behaviors. So it's made different across different groups. For example, the pure effects may different if we use network structure to define peers. So we cannot just taking average across all the friends they have, because the advantage student and disadvantage student may generate different effects. So that's the second concern we have. And the third concern we have is about peer effects of the behaviors may also affect the network formations. So this is like a interdependence between the network and the behavior. So let me use a interdependence picture to motivate you about like why this may happen. Okay. So first, let's say a student who randomly selects some of his friends at the first stage. Okay. After he formalized a network, and his behavior, since he already be friends with someone else, so his behavior, her behavior will definitely affect all her friends. But after that, all her friends will behave like, for example, they are going to say, okay, this guy is following the discipline. They put a lot of discipline effort there. So he followed the order, followed the rule in the classroom. And actually everyone starting to do that. And this behavior will generate the effect for students who are going to make a decision to be friends with. For example, some guys, they may consider that, okay, I don't want to be a friend with that guy because that guy is not, didn't put any discipline effort in his action. So that's why like I reject to be a friend with him. So there is actually an interdependence among the network and the behavior. So that is why I think what even we do this survey, the data, endogeneity issue in data and this network and behavior dependence are not completely solved in previous literature and model. So that is why like we propose like a new model. Actually, this paper extends the structure model of co-evolution of networks and behaviors in Xie, Huang, and Liu's paper to estimate the heterogeneous peer effects. So we take this into account. And we actually provide an application of the co-evolution network formation models, provide a good application for co-evolution network formation models. And after we use this model, we try to complement the literature about the peer effects on non-cognitive behaviors. We try to find some evidence to show that actually peer effects especially exist for non-cognitive behaviors. So the current finding we have actually is still ongoing project. So I summarize the current finding we have as the following. So the first one is peer effects on non-cognitive behaviors are statistically significant for disadvantaged students. And if we increase one standard deviation, if we increase the peer effects by one standard deviation of the disadvantaged students, we actually increases the daily discipline evaluation, which is a non-cognitive outcome, by 0.084 standard deviations. And more interestingly, we find that for cognitive skills, actually peer effects exist significantly in advantaged students, but for non-cognitive skills, peer effects exist significantly in not disadvantaged students. So what do we mean by that? We will show up this result later. So here is a quickly review about the related literature. I think due to time limit, so I would just briefly talk about one paper that is closely related to our model, which is this Xie, King, and Liu paper 2020. So in their settings, they use actually R&D collaboration networks, and they consider more like undirected setting. But in our case, since our survey asks to nominate your friends, so in our setting, we more consider the direction settings. So the rest of the talk is organized as the following. So first, I will briefly talk about the model setup and how we revise it. And then we are going to talk about briefly talk about the estimation. After that, I will show up the data. We have like the descriptive statistics, and then finally we will show the current empirical result we have. So first, let's briefly talk about model. So consider now we have like a multiple independent L like direct networks, and each network actually they contain small NL players. Okay, so and these players are divided as two subsets. So one is called advantage student set, and one is called disadvantage student set. And for each of these students in the network, we can actually observe the K covariates. And these are like exogenous generated, okay? And there is another behavior Y, okay? This Y is like the effort they are going to take. For example, the discipline effort, like they are going to follow the order from the teacher, or they are going to follow the order from the rule, they are going to follow the rule from the school, sorry. And these Ys are contains behavior outcomes for each player in network L. And the student friendship network is actually represented by an L by NL adjusted symmetric speak G, okay? So we define the GL be a vector that stuck to all the possible pairwise link outcomes for all players in this network, okay? And now each individual is going to making the following decisions, okay? So first, let's look at the utility of each players. So the utility function U for each node is actually depends on three things. The first thing is it depends on the network structure G. And the second one is it depends on the effort they are taking for all the friends. And the third one is they like the covariates they have. So the first term, which actually generates the direct utilities if they decide to connect it with G. If they are not connected, actually this part is gone, okay? And the second part is generated by like the covariates they have. So we call it like direct utilities. And they are interacting with the effort level they are taken. So which is called the utility generated by the student own effort. Okay, so if they choose the effort level, they generate a second part of this utility. And after that, we are starting to take into account the heterogeneous peer effects. So we are thinking about that. So for different groups they interact with, for example, if this I belongs to a disadvantaged group, then there are two types of peer effects it may generated by the action like it taken. Okay, so the first one is called the peer effects of disadvantaged student to disadvantaged student. They are affected by the sum of like we searching over all his friends and see how much disadvantaged students he connected with, and then we are trying to define this related to the network structure and the effort level they interact with. So that's like one type of heterogeneous peer effects the student I may have. And here is another one. So if a student I is disadvantaged student, but we're searching over all his friends he connected with, but he actually, but this one are searching over all advantaged student asset, okay? That's asset, sorry. And then the GIJ are going to be interact with if they I and J are connected and they are taking this effort to interact with each other. So this is like a first type. But if I belongs to advantage student, his type is advantage, then he will define the similarly. So that's why like we are trying to define these four type of peer effects based on network structure differently. And of course, here's the when you take any effort level, there is a cost here in your utility. You cannot say like I don't have any cost no matter which level of effort I take. But if we take the partial derivatives with respect to, let's say, yi, you can see we partially get the peer effects actually enter our utility, entered our outcome based on the first order condition. And this part actually does not depend on any y, so it is disappeared if we take the partial derivatives with respect to yi. Okay, so that is how we model this interdependence between the network and the effort level. Okay, so and of course, here one of the difficulty is the co-evolution, because you can see the utility is actually interact between the network structure and the effort level, right? So that's why when we talk about this modeling, we have to see like how people make decisions. So to model that, actually we are following the paper by Bloom 1993 originally described called stochastic best response dynamics. So the progress is as the following. Okay, so there are two states, and for each state at the beginning, I flip a coin. If the coin is head, then that means S is equal to S1 with probability P0. So I'm going to just change my G, which means I'm just going to change my link decision. But given the rest of the Y, which is the effort decision, stable. And if I flip the coin, which is the tail is up, then that means I'm in the state 2 with probability 1 minus P0. Then I'm just going to adjust my Y, but taking the rest of G as given. So the decision are like the following. So for example, if I realized in G state and the model is I choose to connect it with a player J, that means my utility generated by taking the Y, all the effort as given should greater than I do not connect it with J. And this utility condition also holds similar for Y. So if I take G as a fix, but I just take Y equal to some Y, and it's also generates a bigger utility than rest of the Ys. Okay, so after some appropriate like assumptions, like we can actually write this game because we model it structurally, like we model it as a game based on the utility function. So we can actually written this network formation as a potential game. And if we written as that, like based on Modera Sharpley 1996, then the problem becomes easy because now we can just go back to the traditional estimation method by taking into account the co-evolution between network and the effort. So similar to proposition 1 in Xie, King, and Liu 2020, the model generates a Markov chain co-evolution process and converges to a unique stationary distribution. And we can just write out this distribution like theoretically, but numerically, these denominator, which is very hard to estimate. Then what we are going to do is we are going to follow the follow the estimation method proposed by Liang 2010. It's called a double metropolistic hasting to calculate this denominator. Then we can get this likelihood numerically. And just by solving this likelihood, we can automatically estimate the structure parameter we are interested in. Okay, so this is basically the model setup and the estimation. And now let's jump into the empirical side and look at the data. So the data is basically called the longitudinal study of the children development. It's called the LSCD survey, and the response rate is almost 100%. And it composed by 5 parts and help us to identify the left behind students, which is also called disadvantaged students easily. And the location, of course, as I mentioned, it's a Mianzhu city located in Deyang, municipality, Sichuan province in China. And the population here we have is actually 21 township and the total population of 460,000 population there. So it's like a typical migrant landing city. Okay, so the total sample we finally selected are basically the total sample we finally selected are basically 18 different schools in 18 different townships and 4 to 6 years grade student. And each grade we have either 1 classes or 1 to 4 classes. And the sample size we are using for this estimation is actually we randomly selected 1 class in each of the grades of each school in 5 and 6 grades. So the final sample included about like 1,200 students from 28 classes in 14 different schools. And this survey, we got the network relationship based on the network modular survey. So the survey asked each student to nominate up to 3 friends in the same class. Actually, we have the following up survey data, and later year we relaxed it to 5, I think. And the dependent variable of the behaviors, so the behavior effort variable we are taking into account here are 2. So the first one is called test score, and the second one is called a discipline score. So the test score is more like a review for cognitive behavior, and the discipline score is assumed as a non-cognitive effort. So the test score, if their score is high, that means the cognitive effort they put there is high, and the discipline score is like the discipline effort they put there is high if their score is high. Okay, so first let's look at the descriptive statistics. So here I just want to quickly mention one thing is about this ratio. So the ratio of the left behind or the parent absent percentage in each of the classes are actually quite high. So if you look at this line, actually most of them are like about 40 to 50%, and at the least of them are actually from like 18 to 20%. So that's why, like, I think that the disadvantaged student groups in the class actually are relatively big. They are not like just a very small groups there. So this is like the descriptive statistics where I'm trying to show here. And now based on the model, the likelihood estimation. So first, since we are using DMH, which is MCMC method, so we have to show that our MCMC method converges to a stationary distribution. So here is some graphs for MCMC diagnostic plots. And you can see actually the results based on our model are actually distributed normal and they are flat. So that means the estimation result already converges and they are stable. So that's why the next one, let's look at the empirical results about the peer effects. So here, I think I just, because we control a lot of variables. So here we just reported the main table about the main parameters we are interested in here. So here are four peer effect, heterogeneous peer effects coefficients we are talking about here. And if you look at the first row and the third row, so now forget about the second row and the fourth row, because individual fixed effect, the inference shapes have a little bit like accuracy issues. So just look at the first row, sorry, first column and third column. Sorry about that. First column and the third column. So if you look at that, you can see actually, so when we take effort as a test score, the peer effects of the advantaged students are actually statistically significant, but the rest of them actually are not, like we cannot see that. And but if we change the Y to be the discipline effort, which is like a non-cognitive outcomes, actually you can see the peer effects of the disadvantaged students like play an important role here. And that's actually the main finding we are trying to claim here is like for non-cognitive outcomes, actually the non-cognitive like disadvantaged students peer effects play a more important role here. Okay, so that's like the first finding we have, but also you can see the contextual effects. So for test score, if we look at that, actually only both the parents left home, they play an important, they are statistically significant and they have a huge effect for cognitive outcomes. But actually, if no matter father left home, mother left home, or both parents left home, they all affected these disadvantaged students. So that means they all affected the non-cognitive outcomes. So that's like the primary estimation result we have at current stage. And moreover, I think to answer the second questions, we try to do a counterfactual analysis. We do some reallocations. So what the reallocation we are doing, the counterfactual experiment we are doing here is we try to switch the disadvantaged students with the number of advantaged students from the same class and see how does the welfare and the network structure changes overall for the whole class. And what we do here is we randomly pick up a classroom for simulations, and in each simulation, 5 of the advantaged students in the classroom are swapped or switched with another 5 disadvantaged students for remaining classroom. And until the proportion of the disadvantaged student is 100% in this class. And we want to see what when the proportion are changes, like or increases, or when the proportion of the disadvantaged students are increases, how does the network structure and the cognitive or non-cognitive outcomes changes? So here is the first empirical result we have, that it says like as long as the proportion of the disadvantaged student increases, actually the network densities keep increasing, which means like the similar type of the student get in, the disadvantaged students, they are making more and more friends. And of course, similarly, the shape is similar for transitivities. So the transitivity is like they measure the key paths of each players located for each of the player, and we're taking the average. You can see it's also increases here. So it's pretty much similar. And for second one, we are actually calculate the average test score of the advantaged students one way increasing the proportion of the disadvantaged students. And you can see that since we standardize the outcomes, like the effort, the test score. So here you can see it keep decreasing when we keep increasing the the disadvantaged student proportion. And the similar thing here, for disadvantaged students, the average score for them also keep decreasing. Okay, so both the like advantaged student and the disadvantaged students, they show up the similar patterns. So that means that they become worse off for their tests. That's like the first one we talk about here. And the second one actually is a little bit weird. So for non-cognitive outcomes, what we are trying to talk about here is what we're still trying to change the proportion of the disadvantaged students, and we keep increasing that by doing this reallocation. And you can see actually their discipline effort, their outcome, their non-cognitive outcome is actually become better. So that means like their discipline become better. So similar thing here, if we change that in the long run, they seems like become a little bit better and stay at some levels. So that's actually I think it's maybe due to the peer effects is positive. So if one increasing the one standard deviation of the effort level of their non-cognitive, then maybe the whole classes, they become more and more like discipline, their discipline score become more like higher and higher. So that's like our current one, but still these tails are like a little bit weird. So we still need to double check about these two parts. Probably because the sample is too small, the proportion of that part, like the class satisfy those proportions are just a few class of them. So when we take average, the value is weird. So we still need to double check that. And okay, so now like the conclusions. So this paper actually estimates the heterogeneous peer effects of the disadvantaged student. And now for current findings, like we find like for non-cognitive skills, like peer effects of the disadvantaged student matters and they're important. But however, I think now like in current version, like I think Professor Huang gave us like a very good comments. It's about like the behaviors like is actually a single dimension. So if we look at the cognitive, which is test effort, study effort, and the non-cognitive effort, which is the discipline effort, like separately, maybe it's a little bit weird. So because people knows that they are interacting with each other. So how about if we extend this to multiple behavior dimensions? So that's like a one dimension I think we are going to pursue like next stage. And the second one is about the policy intervention. So it's more like the using, because we are doing, we do a structural estimation. So one policy we are trying to do is if the disadvantaged student migrant to big cities or the Hugo system restriction is canceled, like how does that happen to the current like network structure and the welfare analysis about the outcome. And also another one we can do is we try to mimic exogenous policies that government encourage parents to stay locally to find a job. So they do not encourage these people to go outside and find another people. Then those disadvantaged students become back to normal and advantaged students. So that's how we do it. So that's all my presentation. Thank you.
Okay.
So any questions?
Okay, thanks. Yeah, any questions, Klaus?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, I could have one. Maybe I've done once something somehow related to what you're doing also with Chinese data. The issue was there, what happens to left behind kids in school? And there we found that the role of siblings are important.
Oh, actually,
so the elder sister and so things like that. Do you have looked at also for family? I mean, if there's family behind, so to speak, some kind of family, either other kids or parents or the sisters of parents or whatever, uncles and sons of family structure. Does this play a role or in your analysis?
Actually, I think we control the siblings and a lot of like family characteristics in our model. So I think if you go back to here, maybe quickly recap. So in utilities, actually this part. In utilities, actually we consider a lot of like X. So one of the X we actually control is taking from the family characteristics, like their education, parents' education level, whether they have siblings or not, and all these family characteristics, as well as we can collect it, we control included in our utility. So that's why, like, I think when we estimate the models, we seem to control those effects. If I understand your question correctly.
Yeah, I understand the point. So your estimate is not biased or whatever, but the question is, how much is it important? If the parents are replaced by other family, yes, then the effect is not so damaging. My point. First, it's interesting to see whether there are compensating effects, yes, of family on the problem. So if the kids are left behind and that's a problem, yes, fine. But if this is somehow compensated by family, that would be not as worse, as bad. Yes, that's just my question.
Yeah,
I see.
Thanks, Klaus. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. Who replaces the parents as the main guardian of these left behind children is very important. But I guess here this paper focuses on peer effects in schools. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the next paper. Migrant children.
Before that, I want to have a question. Before moving to the next, please, can I ask you one question?
Sure. Go
Okay.
ahead. Sure.
Okay. Thank you, Zhang, for your nice presentation. I'm from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. My name is Urgea. And the paper that you presented, it was very nice. And I want to have know something about the issue of endogeneity as well as interdependency overcoming. How do you overcome these two problems?
So because I think to overcome these two problems, when I'm modeling my utility function, actually I already allows the network structure and the behavior to interact with each other. And so every time when each of the player, they make decisions, they are going to pick up the G and the Y, recursively. So it's like I'm modeling it as like co-evolution, right? So that means like in each state, he either enter to adjust the G or either enter to adjust the Y. But every time, no matter G he adjusted or Y he adjusted, the co-evolution happens and automatically final converge to stationary distributions. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Thank you. I've got it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, we need to move to the next paper. Migrant children's take-up of social health insurance, experimental evidence from China, presented by Menghan Shen from Sun Yat-sen University.
Okay, thank you, Professor Feng. Thanks for the valuable opportunity to present our working paper on migrant children's take-up for social health insurance experimental evidence from China. So there is mounting evidence that health insurance is important for the health and well-being of the children. However, many disadvantaged families fail to take up the social health insurance for which their children are eligible of, and when the benefits are high and the costs are minimum. So there's a growing set of work that suggests behavioral frictions are the impediments in the take-up or the choice of the appropriate level of health insurance coverage. For example, previous literature points out that lack of information about the eligibility or the struggle or because the cost sharing rules are difficult to understand, so that the parents struggle to understand the program benefits, or that there exist comparison frictions in the cases when the parents, when the children are eligible for multiple health insurance plans, and the parents, it's difficult for parents to figure out which are the dominant plans, or inattention, inertia, or procrastination may play a role. In China, administrative data, despite that more and more cities allow migrant children to participate the local, to enroll in the local social health insurance, administrative data suggests that the take-up rate of social health insurance in the city where this elementary school age migrant children reside is less than 40%. And one of the major reasons is that some of these children are enrolled in the social health insurance through their hometown plans. However, because of the fragmented nature and the lack of geographic portability of social health insurance, their hometown health insurance actually does not provide adequate protection for health or against catastrophic costs. For example, their hometown health insurance does not cover outpatient care at all. Secondly, when children have inpatient care outside of the city where they were enrolled their health insurance at, the cost sharing rate is usually increased by 50%. So this results so in the end, their hometown health insurance can only cover 35 to 55% of the inpatient spending when they're living in in metropolitan cities like Guangzhou, where the Guangzhou health insurance plan can cover for more than 80% of the inpatient care spending. Thus, it's irrational for these families to keep enroll their children in their hometown health social health insurance. So our study intends to examine whether helping families to overcome behavioral barriers can increase take-up in the local social health insurance plans. By conducting randomized control trials in 9 migrant schools in Guangzhou, China, we designed the experiment with 3 treatment arms. We ask every 1st to 4th grader parents to fill out our electronic questionnaires, and we embedded our treatment in the electronic questionnaires. More specifically, to examine whether information constraint, we first provide information emphasizing the eligibility of migrant children in the enrollment of social health insurance, because because the parents may just simply not know that their children are eligible. This is because usually the migrant parents are not eligible for the social health insurance plan. The cities have created special rules for the migrant children who are enrolled in the migrant or public schools. In addition, the migrant children are not eligible for the social health insurance plan before they are enrolled in the elementary school, which means if they are 5 or 4 years old and they're enrolled in kindergarten, they're not eligible for this plan. It's only when they are enrolled in elementary school they are eligible for this plan. So there's a possibility that information constraint on the eligibility has impeded the take-up. Secondly, it is possible that the parents does not understand the cost sharing rules in Guangzhou and does not understand the differences of the cost sharing rules between Guangzhou and their hometown. These are the two dominant reasons why parents do not take up when we are conducting the field work with the parents and school principals. Thus, we designed simplified, tailored, and salient information for migrant families and we specifically compare the benefits of enrolling in the local social health insurance versus the hometown social health insurance. Lastly, in our second stage of our experiment, we test whether procrastination plays a role in the take-up of social health insurance by sending them a nudge, reminding them the importance of having social health insurance for children with a countdown to the deadlines to enroll before the fixed date of annual enrollment. So these are just a brief overview of our findings. We found that informing families about their children's eligibility did not increase the willingness to enroll or actual enrollment overall, but it actually has a positive impact on parents who are less likely to know about their children's eligibility and families that utilized healthcare in the previous year. Second, providing information about both eligibility and benefits increased willingness to enroll by 7.3 percentage points or 13%, and actual enrollment by 9.4 percentage points or 44.3%. Third, nudging by sending one text message did not increase enrollment. Fourth, we asked them why they enrolled or not enrolled in our online survey, and we find that the cost was not their main concern, even though they were asked to pay a small annual premium. And fifth, administrative hurdles also appear to be an important barriers to enrollment, because almost half of the parents who attempted but failed to enroll report that they didn't enroll. They tried, but they didn't successfully enroll because of administrative hurdles. So this paper contributes to the burgeoning literature on the impact of information intervention on take-up of health insurance. Previous literature generally requires enumerators to send a postcard or make phone calls or visit the household in person. In comparison, our intervention was extremely light touched and almost free, or we can say it's free, as our electronic questionnaires are distributed via the parent-teacher WeChat group through the WeChat apps. This suggests the availability of an easy-to-scale approach to provide information that can improve decision-making and ultimately increase families' well-being. Secondly, it's related to a set of literature that focus on how to reduce comparison friction. Actually, comparison, I didn't write it here, but actually comparison friction takes place in both education as well as in the enrollment of health insurance. It's being documented prevalently in both education and health insurance. And the contribution of our paper is that we, however, paper like Clean and Dorman 2021, their setting is usually the American health insurance plans, and they generally have very complicated cost-sharing rules as well as many plans to choose from. However, in our setting, we only have two choices: their hometown plans and their local plans. So we document that consumers can choose even non-optimally, even in such a simple setting with only two choices, and one plan being obviously financially superior. This suggests that individuals may not be able to sensibly navigate the choices they face, even when the choices are not overly complicated, highlighting the need for intervention even in a relative simple setting for public policies that incorporate any choice. I know in our setting is not, designed to really give people choice, but in the end, because they are migrants, they actually have choice. And and we highlight the need for intervention even in this case. Third, because we highlight the roles of administrative hurdles, we also contribute to this line of literature. Survey data, our survey data shows that administrative hassles has impeded the take-up of social housing insurance. And in addition, we provide novel evidence that information can actually reduce the perception of administrative hurdles. This joins the work that finds provision of information can nudge people to overcome behavioral biases, like lacking attention. So this is our setting. We conducted the experiment in Guangzhou. This is the payment premium. I have the premium payment premium by cities. We actually have our RAs actually have collected a large set of cost sharing rules and premiums in most of the cities that our migrants are most likely to come from. As you can see, the premium difference is not that large. In Guangzhou, one pays 363 last year. This is we conducted the experiment last year. In other cities in Guangdong or outside of Guangdong, the premium standard is usually 320. So the premium difference is only 43 yuan. So it's not surprising that we find that that this is not the biggest driver in impeding take-up. And as you can see, the minimum payment is also lower in inpatient care is lower in Guangzhou, and the cost sharing rate is only 20% versus in other places is much higher, because we're talking about out of town visits in Guangzhou. And in Guangzhou, the payment limit is actually the cap for the inpatient care is actually also much larger. And in addition, children uses a lot of outpatient care, and the Guangzhou House Insurance pays for outpatient care with a cost sharing rate when people using their hometown health insurance but visiting Guangzhou, they cannot get outpatient care reimbursement. So in response, the other information in our setting that's also useful to know is that in response to the problem created by fragmented house insurance, the central government has published a guideline in 2016 requiring all cities should allow migrants to participate in social housing insurance. So in my other paper, I have actually reviewed all the 20 largest cities in China, and most of these largest cities, except for Beijing and Shanghai and Shenzhen, have allowed the enrollment of migrant children in the local social housing insurance if children are already enrolled in school in the city. So as we said before, migrant children can enroll once they start attending primary or secondary school in Guangzhou, and there's some benefit, but the participation is voluntary. I guess I should also mention that the Guangzhou Social Housing Insurance Bureau, they, regardless of the school type, they will send a brochure, a standardized brochure, not tailored for children, not tailored for migrant families, to all the children, all the students in primary and secondary school. And the teacher, I believe the teacher also sends a reminder, which is drafted by the Social Housing Insurance Bureau, reminding the students to enroll. And then I think it's also worth pointing out that maybe it's not so useful for this paper, but it's also worth pointing out that the bureaucrats are not incentivized to have all the migrant children enrolled. They're incentivized to have all the local children enrolled, because every year they will count the number of children, or they will count the number of people enrolled, and say, oh, you know, this year we have like 97 or 99% people enrolled. But for migrant children, because they are not considered as locals, they're not considered as the bureaucrats' responsibility. So we collect data on willingness to enroll, attempted enrollment, actual enrollment. Which we define as successful enrolled. And in addition, we try to understand the mechanism by asking them why they did or did not enroll. So we send the surveys to the parents in 9 schools for the 1st to 4th graders. And 168 students enrolled. And this is a number which is in correspondence with the administrative data that I have used to assess the percentage of migrant children enrolled. So it's representative of the migrant children in Guangzhou. And for the non-enrolled group, we sent 1/3 goes to the control group, and we treated we were assigned 577 to the treatment 1 group and 560 to the treatment group 2 group. Oh, sorry, for the randomization, we conducted the randomization at the individual level. We sent out the electronic questionnaire. Only when the parents click our link, they are assigned to the control or the treatment group. And then in our second stage, for all the control and treatment group, we conducted the nudge experiment, and we are successful in following up for more than 95% of the treatment of our treated and control kids. So this is our actual experiment for the control group. We just tell them, oh, you can enroll. It's important for children to enroll. This is the fee and this is the deadline. And for the eligibility group, we tell them your children can enroll. And we specifically said all elementary and middle school children can enroll. Like, for migrant families, when they receive many information, including school choice, like some of those policies do not affect, do not apply to their children. So it's important to, so in our case, we emphasize that your children can enroll. So for the second treatment group, we told them all children can enroll, and in addition, we specifically help them make the comparison of Guangzhou and their hometown. We say you just pay a little bit more, 73 yuan more a year, and you basically get higher lower cost sharing rate. And we give an example of an inpatient care episode, and saying that, and we help them make the calculation and saying that Guangzhou can cover more than your hometown. And then, so for the second figure, and then for the third figure, we tell them, your hometown actually don't cover outpatient care, but Guangzhou does. So this is our regression framework. We control for parent level controls, but our results are basically the same. So first we compare the insured and not insured group, and we find both evidence of positive selection and adverse selection, where, for example, people inside Guangzhou are more likely to enroll, people who have suggesting the evidence, suggesting that it's a positive selection. And we find that people whoever has inpatient or outpatient visits, they're more likely to enroll, suggesting that it's adverse selection. And we conducted the balance test, and it's balanced between the control and treatment groups. And this is our descriptive results that we I'll just talk about it in the tables. So if we look at if we look at column 5, that's where we at in all the controls, that treatment 1 doesn't really have an impact in the overall group, but treatment 2 increases the take up by 7.3 percentage points. For willingness to enroll, for attemptment to enroll, and in the end, we also look at we call them back after the deadline and ask them whether they actually take up. And this is the result that increased the take up by 9.4 percentage points. And we conducted some heterogeneity analysis. For the time being, we're gonna skip that. And this is a mechanism for willingness to enroll. We asked them why they enroll and why they didn't enroll. And we find that the parents in our treatment groups are more likely to say that because Guangzhou social housing has outpatient care as well as inpatient care, which suggests that they actually understood and remembered our treatment. So it's not because of other things. And let me see, sorry, on other insurance. Okay, so we also interesting. We also find that they're more likely to take willing to buy other commercial health insurance as well. And then we look at other outcomes, the willingness to pay, concern about. We also ask them whether they're concerned about catastrophic costs from health episode and pressure of living in Guangzhou. I think it's worth to point out that the control mean is so high. Like when I designed the questionnaire, I didn't expect that 98% of the parents are actually very concerned about the catastrophic cost from health episode for their children. And 94.5% of people are express that they have large pressure. I should say they have large stress living in Guangzhou. But our treatment didn't change this this answers. And then we also look at the effect of nudging, but nudging didn't really have an impact. I think it's partially that we only found out that from the parents that the bureau also sent a nudge right before us, so to everyone. So I guess it didn't really make an impact because our nudge didn't contain more detailed information. It was pretty similar to what bureau sent. And then we asked them why they didn't enroll, and we reduced the probability of people answering is because of the administrative hassles of take up in Guangzhou. And also I would like to share the figure for people who attempted to enroll but failed. I think sorry, I don't remember the number, but I remember more than half of the people have attempted to enroll, and for all these people, more than half of the people report that they didn't successfully enroll because of the administrative hurdles. They didn't know how to use the online ad, so do not know how to prepare for the needed documents. And some people said that they couldn't enroll because they couldn't access the hometown social housing insurance. It's not super related to this paper, but one of the major reasons why we actually also conducted the auditing study, not called auditing study, but we actually also called the local bureau, like where they came from, and we called the bureaus and we acted as parents and we asked them, oh, how do we access? So there's a guideline from the central government last year before our experiment saying that you need to make it very easy for everyone to exit the social housing insurance if they want to enroll in where they have migrated. But some places still make it very hard, saying that you need to come in person, despite that the rules are actually require that the simplification. So conclusion, in China, increasing number of cities are allowing migrant children to enroll in social welfare, but the take-up of these programs have been low. Our free intervention that provide information through electronic questionnaire have substantially increased the social housing insurance take-up rate for migrant children, and it's potentially scalable. And we find evidence of administrative hurdles that impede children's and families' access to public benefits and social service. And I also want to, because I know Professor Feng is an expert on migrant children, and I also want to talk about that previously scholars have pointed out that the migrant families also face very complex school choice when they are migrating from, when they are going from elementary to middle school. I couldn't really explain the rules here because it's really complicated. They have to list their 3 choices, and then there's like a lottery, and it's difficult for them to figure out. In addition, so in our online survey, many of the migrant families even ask us, oh, can you give us more guidance on how to choose schools for the middle school? And some of the migrant parents even call when we hang up the phone, and some of the migrant families even call back and ask us, and told us that they want to enroll in social health insurance themselves, and they were asking whether they can and how. So I think there's a large set of work that can be done to improve the decision making, not just in social health insurance, but in school choice and beyond. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Menghan. This is a very interesting work. I am also a parent of migrant children in Guangzhou, so I know from my personal experience, not mine, but my wife's experience, that enrolling your kids in this health insurance program is very difficult. You go to actually you need to go to some, first you need to understand the policy. Maybe that takes a lot of phone calls, and then you need to go to a specific bank to do that. So yeah, it's a lot of work. So I think this is very valuable research. I have a question. Do you have any heterogeneous results, like results for different subgroups, say whether poor families responded more than richer ones, or low educated parents responded more to your intervention, or that kind of? Oh, you do have that, right? Because I'm trying to figure out whether this is more about the information thing, or it is also about the whether the perceived benefit is big enough, right?
Let's see. Sorry, I don't think we asked them about their income. When we are designing the experiment, we're careful of not asking too many questions. So that's all we have that we. Well, okay. the education thing is all we have. But to be honest, when we say it's higher, more than high school, it's probably they went to like a vocational school. They definitely didn't go to university, because when they go to university, they could have changed their migrant status. So I'm not sure how much the difference of the education can make.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Shen also, Professor Serhiy also has a question on from the chat box. How did you deal with information spillover from the treaty to control? So do people talk? The parents talk to each other?
We didn't have any way to deal with the information. We thought about like having more treated group in one class versus others, but we actually end up not doing that. Do parents talk with each other? Our field work suggests that parents are they're very stressed, and they don't have time to socialize with each other. I think when me and enumerators went to migrant schools multiple times, we wanted to interview parents, because in designing the survey, and it was so difficult to, except for the first or second graders, other parents don't really show up. The kids, now I remember, the kids can take a bus home. So parents don't really they don't, parents don't pick up the kids together, so they don't socialize that much. But I don't know if they just take a picture of and then send it to the entire group. I don't know if they did that, but my impression is that they're not like friendly with each other.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. So let's move to the next paper, A Tale of an Aging Society with Digital Revolution, presented by Mingxing Huang from Peking University. Mingxing.
Okay, thank you. I will share my screen. Sorry, there's something wrong with my Zoom. Maybe I can quit the meeting and re-enter. Sorry.
Okay. Let's wait a bit. Thanks to everybody for staying up, staying with us. It's 9:20 now here in China.
Yes, and we are close to the coffee break in Bonn, Germany.
Oh. You can take a coffee and come back.
Well, I have it already with me. I'm cheating. I'm cheating. Okay.
Maybe some snacks.
Okay,
good.
Okay.
Good, you're back. Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, it's okay. Yeah, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. It's my great pleasure to give a presentation here. My name is Mingxing Huang. I'm a student from Peking University. As you may have noticed from the media coverage, we are living in a world where the older people suffer from serious digital divide. So my presentation today has something to do with this topic. As a slide, the title of my presentation is the tale of an aging society with digital revolution. And my presentation today is divided into 4 parts. First, let me introduce the digital divide briefly. Nowadays, the world is undergoing a digital revolution, and which has created the network economy. That is, each user's utility is increasing in the number of other users of that technology and product. Email is a good example, right? Meanwhile, according to the UN report, the population is rapidly aging in the world. So digital divide may happen when digital revolution meets aging population. That is, some older people are left out of the information society because they can't adapt to the new information technologies and products. And our study developed an overlapping generation model to provide an economic perspective for the contradiction between digital revolution and aging population. We find that as aging deepens, the proportion of those left out people to the total population increases, resulting in a negative impact on the social aggregate welfare. We also discussed 2 government policies aiming to bridge the digital divide. They are the pay-as-you-go transport system and manual service windows for the elderly. We find an ambiguous policy effect depending on specific conditions of the economy. Next, let's take a close look at the benchmark model. Consider a standard OLG model where the economic lifespan of each generation consists of 2 periods. Assume each agent only works at the young stage and earns the wage rate omega. Also suppose that the population exponentially grows at a rate of n. Hence, the dependency ratio at period t, which is defined as the retired as a share of the total population, equals 1/2 plus n. Now suppose that individual consumes 2 types of commodities. The first one is a single composite commodity, representing all other goods. And importantly, the second one is information technologies and products. Therefore, the utility function for a typical individual born at time t is given by this equation. As you can see, Vt is his lifetime utility, and Ct is the consumption of the single composite goods, and It is the consumption of information technologies and products. The subscript Y denotes young, and O denotes the old stage, and beta is a discount factor. We assume that U has the following form, in which log C is canonical in the OLG model, and A plus V times N is benefits from the information technologies and products. The first term A represents the standalone benefits, which measures the intrinsic value of the information technologies and products. And the second term, V times N, represents the network effects, where N is the expected share of the population belonging to the network A. To capture the spirit of the digital revolution, we follow Xi 2001 and assume that there is exogenous linear technology progress on standalone benefits. That is, AT equals lambda times 2, where lambda is an exogenous parameter. A higher value of lambda describes a faster digital revolution. Suppose that the single composite commodity is paid by wages, while the information technologies and products are free of charge. For example, the only thing you need to join an email network is to register a free account. However, we assume that there exists a positive cost of switching technology, which differs by people's ability. The switching cost can be time or money spent to learn and adopt the new information technologies. When a person is born with the ability being theta, the switching cost for type theta individual is given by Z theta. Let phi Z is a cumulative distribution function for Z. And as here shows, higher the ability, lower the switching cost. To derive the mean results, we follow Yatsen SR 2002 and assume that factor prices, the wage rate omega, and the growth rate of return of capital R are exogenously given. Let's denote the interest rate, then R equals 1 plus I. And this is a timeline for an individual born at time T. Assume that each person is born belonging to the network of the state-of-the-art information technologies and products. And the individual decides whether to switch new technologies or not when the individual gets out. Now let's consider the agent's decisions. Consider generation T. The equilibrium is determined by the cutoff level. They had T plus 1. Individuals with low switching costs, which is lower than they had, will switch to the new information technologies and products. But those with high switching costs will be locked in the outdated technologies AT. So consider a typical agent belonging to generation T with switching cost Z. The switching decision is determined by a cost-benefit analysis. If the individual chooses not to switch, the lifetime is given by solving the following problem. V1T is the value function. Notice that the utility from the information technologies and the products is given by AT at the older stage. Otherwise, if the individual chooses to switch the technology and the lifetime utility is given by solving the following problem. Still, notice that the individual must pay the switching cost at the older stage in order to adapt to the new information technologies and products. The expected share of population belonging to different networks on the value function is given by the following equations. As you can see, the denominator is the total population, and the numerator is the group belonging to the network AT, and the group belonging to the network AT plus 1. We assume 4 field expectations conditions. That is, agents' expectations about the network size turn out to be correct in equilibrium. We also define DD as the share of those who can't adapt to the new information technologies on the total population at time t. Therefore, DD is used to indicate the degree of digital divide. Higher the DD, larger the digital divide. So solve the above equations, we get the following proposition 1. For generation T, the cutoff level they had T+1 uniquely exists and is implicitly determined by the following equation. We find that the hat is stationary and it doesn't vary according to the time t. Second, the cutoff level they had increases with both the population growth rate n and the technology progress parameter lambda. So from proposition 1, we can draw 2 conclusions. The first one is that the deepening of the aging population leaves a larger population out of the information society. To be more specific, from the first equation, if lambda is fixed and n decreases, we have the hat will decreases. That means a larger dependency ratio dr leads to a larger digital divide. Second, a faster digital revolution lowers the threshold of the ability to adapt to the new information technologies and helps in releasing the digital divide. Similarly, we draw this conclusion from this equation. If n is fixed and lambda increases, the hat will increases. That is, DD will decreases. We further investigate how the meeting of digital revolution and the aging population investigates the aggregate social welfare. Or consider average welfare of generation T, where the hat is the cutoff level. V2 is the lifetime utility of the people who choose to switch the technology, and V1 is the lifetime utility of people who not switch the technology. Then we have the following results. The aggregate welfare of generation T increases with both the population growth rate parameter n and the technology progress parameter lambda. We can also draw 2 conclusions from proposition 2. The first one is that the deepening of the aging population results in a negative impact on the aggregate social welfare. And the second one is, as digital revolution accelerates, it can improve aggregate social welfare. Now let's take a summary for the benchmark model. The progress of information technologies and products itself is a good thing. A faster digital revolution lowers the threshold to adopt the new information technologies and products, releases the digital divide, and improves the aggregate social welfare. However, the aging of the population can be a considerable challenge. The aging population leaves a larger proportion of people out of the information society and widens the digital divide. What's worse, the aging population decreases the aggregate social welfare. Next, we will investigate 2 government policies that aim to bridge the digital divide. They are a pay-as-you-go transfer system and manual service windows for the elderly. So now let's consider a pay-as-you-go transfer system first. Suppose that the government levies a tax and collects tau times omega times L from the current young people, and the government distributes it to the current old. The transferred money is used to incentivize the elderly to join the community training, such as how to use apps on smartphones. The budget constraint of the government is balanced period by period. That is, the money collected equals to the money distributed. Assumes that the government sustains a constant tax rate, then BT equals to 1 plus n times tau times omega. Now, if the agent chooses not to switch, then he solves the following problem. Notice that how the pay-as-you-go transfer system change the budget constraint at the young and old stage. Similarly, if the agent chooses to switch the technology and he solves the following problem, and still solves for the above equations, we have the following proposition 3. Results 1 and 2 are the same as the benchmark case, so I will not repeat them here. When tau equals 0, though, the whole model degenerates to the benchmark case. So results 3 in proposition 3 tells us how the policy can impact the cutoff level. We find that only if n is larger than I can the policy is the helps in easing the digital divide. And still we have the proposition 4 regarding how the policy impacts the aggregate social welfare. And still results 1 present the same results with the benchmark case, and results 2 show that the policy can improve the aggregate social welfare only if n is larger than I. Now let's consider the second policy, manual service windows for the elderly. In fact, in some situations, certain services can only be obtained with the new information technologies. For example, online ticket purchase for the elderly who can't adopt the new technology. The government must set up manual service windows to help them to obtain corresponding services. Consider generation T when receiving manual service. One period utility at the old stage is assumed to be given by this equation. That is, the person obtains the standalone benefits, but loses the network effects of the new information technologies and products. Assume the total cost of keeping manual service windows at time t is linear in the number of the current elderly. And still the government levies a tax on young people to finance the policy, and the budget is balanced period by period. Similarly, we have the cost-benefit analysis, and by solving the above equations, we have the following proposition. Notice that here, a higher policy cost decreases the proportion of those who pay switching costs and adopt the new technology. Besides, from this equation, we find that the proportion of people who pay switching costs and learn the new technology can be lower than the benchmark case if the technology progress is rapid enough. And proposition 6 shows how the policy impacts the aggregate social welfare. And the third equation here shows that the welfare level of generation T is negatively related to the cost of keeping the manual service windows. Finally, I will give a brief conclusion. So accompanied by the digital revolution, the population is rapidly aging in the world. And under those two trends, digital divide becomes one of the greatest challenges. We develop an overlapping generations model to provide an economic perspective for the contradiction between digital revolution and the aging population. We show that in a society where information technology and products update rapidly, the deepening of the aging may result in a larger digital divide, which in turn lowers the aggregate social welfare. In addition, we discussed two government policies, which are a pay-as-you-go transfer system and manual service windows for the elderly, and investigate how the policy can depend on specific conditions of the economy. Our paper mainly contributes to the literature that investigates the contradiction between aging population and digital revolution. But our research also has limitations. The first one is that the two policies in our model cannot be compared directly. So we don't know which one is better. And second, two periods may not be representative of an individual's lifespan. And finally, empirical studies are needed to examine predictions derived from our model. And that's all. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Mingxing. Yeah, very important topic and interesting study. Any questions from the audience? Any comments or questions? Okay. Okay. Actually, we are almost right on time, right? So, so I want to thanks to all the presenters this evening, and thanks to our audience for staying with us, and thank you for your support of the GLO IESR Joint Conference. And we hope to see you maybe next year. Klaus, do you have anything to say?
No, you did it very well. Also, all my thanks to the activists, and I also, as an editor of the journal Population Economics, as we both are, Zhang and myself, we are happy to see there is lots of productive work going on, and we hope to see some of the very best papers of all the people who are still listening are submitted to us. And okay, so thank you very much. Also, the local organization for, again, a very efficient event. Zhang, your team did very well. Thanks.
Thanks. Okay, yeah. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Bye-bye.